There are several Buffalo Bills players that need to bounce back in 2024, so I'm breaking them down for you today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of Go Bills and Buffalo's Run, also the co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Well, folks, welcome in and happy Memorial Day to you. Memorial Day, always a day of celebration, a day of reflection, and obviously we are honoring those who have lost their lives serving the United States. And the Buffalo Bills have a player that is probably overlooked in this conversation, and that's Bob Kalsu, who was a 1968 eighth-round pick out of Oklahoma by the Buffalo Bills. And he started for the Bills in 1968 as a rookie and was the team's Rookie of the Year. He joined the Army after the 1968 season, and he was killed in the Vietnam War in 1970. And so he's one of not many, but some NFL players that have lost their life in combat. And I wanted to just pay tribute to him here at the opening of this show as I record this on Memorial Day. He's a member of the Buffalo Bills Ring of Honor, which feels very much warranted based on the sacrifice that he made for the country. And one other note here that's pretty heartbreaking in the Bob Kalsu story is that 2 days after his passing, his wife gave birth to a son. And so wanted to just remember and recognize Bob Kalsu here at the opening of this podcast as we record it on Memorial Day. All right, folks, the topic today are Buffalo Bills players that need to bounce back in 2024. And there are several. And I want to really focus in on them today because they're going to be important players for the team in 2024. And I think one of the biggest downfalls of the 2023 Bills that lost to the Kansas City Chiefs in the divisional round were simply that they had so many guys that were injured and they didn't get the expected impact from highly paid players. I've said it a million times. Bruce Nolan says it a million times. The NFL is a limited resource environment. Your contracts have to perform. You can't pay every single player. And when you do pay a player, they have to perform. And there are several Bills players that are handsomely paid that didn't perform last year. And I understand that a lot of that is injury related and injury luck is outside of the team's control. But the bottom line is that there's a long list of Bills players that are highly paid that weren't available or couldn't perform to their standard due to injury. Now, some of those players are no longer around like a Tre'Davious White, but a lot of them are still here. And so whether it's injury or performance related, I want to break down Bills players that need to bounce back in 2024. And I have a player that I want to start with in Dawson Knox, the Bills tight end. In week 5, he suffered a broken wrist against the Jaguars. And the more you think about that trip to London to play the Jaguars, everything about it was terrible. Not only the way that Sean McDermott managed the trip in terms of when they left, but Dawson Knox wrist injury, Daquan Jones torn pec, Matt Milano tibial plateau fracture. Diggs seemed to have some type of maybe core muscle injury, something like that. It was a disaster trip for the Bills. And part of that disaster was Dawson Knox suffering a broken wrist. And he tried to play through it. Tried to play the next 2 games against the Giants and Patriots. You could tell he wasn't right. Couldn't block, had some drops in those games. It was frustrating. Meanwhile, Dalton Kincaid, I think, had a concussion right along that same time. And so I think that probably played into Dawson Knox's decision to try to gut it out, but he wasn't right. So he has surgery. He misses the next 5 games. And that 5-game stretch that he was out, the Bills went 2-3. They beat the Bucs and the Jets. They lost to the Bengals, Broncos, and Eagles. Then he comes back in week 14 against Kansas City. The Bills win their last 5 regular season games. Not sitting here telling you that that's because of Dawson Knox, but that offense did stabilize, especially the run game, when Dawson Knox was back in the lineup. And Knox was coming off of 2 very strong seasons in 2021 and 2022. In those seasons combined, over 1,100 yards and 15 receiving touchdowns. Then you get to 2023, 22 catches, 186 yards, 2 touchdowns. Those are career lows across the board in receptions, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns. And you had some drop problems pop back up that you felt mostly diminished in 2021 and 2022. So you lost a fair amount of impact here. And it's less about the receiving production, to be honest with you. I know that's a great way to measure the impact of a weapon in the passing game is, raw stats. But Dawson Knox was an important piece in what they wanted this offense to be, with 12 personnel being a big part of the plan, right? We saw this. They draft Dalton Kincaid. They pay Dawson Knox. They want to run 2 tight end sets. And you can't even get 5 games into it before you lose Dawson Knox as a big part of what this offensive identity was supposed to be. Dawson Knox is important for the overall blocking surface in the run game and in the pass game. He's important in the red zone. He's important for how he frees up Dalton Kincaid to be the move piece tight end. And so you lost all of that for a good chunk of the season. And so that begs the question, well, what can we expect from Dawson Knox in 2024, as he is one of the signature guys that you want to bounce back? Well, first of all, it somewhat floors me, but Dawson Knox is the longest tenured offensive skill player on this team. The most time on task with Josh Allen of any of his skill players is Dawson Knox. And Dawson Knox has come through in some really big moments for the Buffalo Bills, especially against the Kansas City Chiefs. This guy has 6 receiving touchdowns in the postseason over the last 4 years. He's caught a touchdown pass. The first touchdown of the postseason, the last 4 years, has been scored by Dawson Knox. He helps force matchups in the passing game. You hear Sean McDermott, Brady Beane talk all the time. It's a matchup league. Well, Dawson Knox helps you force those and dictate those matchups. He helps you win the edge when running the football with his ability to block. And he can also make a few plays in the passing game and has made some significant plays in the passing game. Plus, there's a leadership component with Dawson Knox. I think he's in line to get a C on his jersey this year. You lose 6 of your 8 captains from last year. There's going to be some new captains, right? And I look at this offense, and I feel like, of course, Josh Allen. I think Deion Dawkins. I think the third guy could be Dawson Knox. And so while I don't think he's going to go out and have this monster production, but I think he's going to play around 60% of the snaps, bring a lot as a blocker, catch 30 to 40 balls, score some touchdowns, and be a net positive to the team, where maybe you look back at last year and in totality, when reflecting on the entire season, I don't think he got enough from Dawson Knox. Again, injury is a big part of that. But going into last season, he was a $14 million a year tight end. That's a handsomely paid tight end. Now that contract's been reworked. It's come down in exchange for like some more guaranteed money. That's probably going to keep Dawson Knox on the team this year and next. But you need more from him. And he's definitely a big-time bounce-back candidate in my eyes for this team in 2024 and beyond. So Dawson Knox, the lead player I want to talk about, but there's a couple more big ones that I'm going to get to on the other side of it. So be sure to stick with me. It's winner take all time in the NBA and the NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a huge win of your own. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. And look, they got some fun Bills stuff that you can get on. Right now, they have Josh Allen at plus 800 to be the NFL MVP. That's the second highest odds. This one's really fascinating to me. They have Josh Allen's passing yards, the over-under for 2024 passing yards for Josh Allen at 3,675.5 yards. Can you believe that? Like, go smash the over on that for sure. I can't imagine him having that few passing yards. They also have the Bills over-under for wins set at 10.5. So if you want to get in on some Bills action, you can do that as well over at FanDuel. So check it out. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every moment more. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, folks, there's two players that I want to talk about in this segment. One of them is Von Miller. The other one is Tyler Bass. I want to start with Tyler Bass, who got paid a nice contract, right? Going into last season, 4 years, $20 million, $5 million a year kicker. And he started the season great. I think we forget this. He started the season great, 10 of 10 on field goals, 18 of 18 on extra points through the first 6 games of the season. And then, boy, oh boy, things got dicey. He missed 2 field goals in a dramatic win over the Giants, a 14-9 win, 2 misses in that game. He missed in the 1-score loss to the New England Patriots, 2 misses in the overtime loss to the Philadelphia Eagles. Was a disaster in the postseason, 2 for 5 in the postseason. For the entire year, Tyler Bass made 76.5% of his field goals. That's not good enough. That's the lowest of his career. And that's it's at least 10% lower than what I find to be acceptable for a kicker in the NFL, much less a guy that's getting paid $5 million a season. 2023 also produced the first miss of Tyler Bass's career inside 30 yards. He was 5 of 9, 56% from 40 to 49 yards. For his career prior to 2023, he was 82% from 40 to 49 yards. $5 million a year kicker, 7th highest paid kicker in the league. It's got to be better. And we hear a lot from Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott about Tyler Bass's mental toughness and how he's wired the right way and all that. Well, this coming season, 2024, is year 1 of the 4-year, $20 million extension. And my confidence in Tyler Bass is not very good. When he went out to go kick that ball against Kansas City, I would have bet anything that he was going to miss it. I said it to my brother watching the game. I said, he's not making this field goal. He was an absolute disaster down the stretch. And what's interesting, if you go back to the 10 most important players of the future of the Buffalo Bills series that we did last week, John Fina, former Bills starting left tackle, first-round pick. John Fina played 148 games for the Buffalo Bills, 23rd most all-time in the history of the team. John Fina ranked him in his top 10 most important players for the future of the Buffalo Bills. Tyler Bass, the kicker. And a lot of feedback came in. Like, I loved all the feedback that we got in that project. And a lot of people said, yeah, I agree that Tyler Bass needs to be in that top 10. I can't get there. I think the players from scrimmage just have more to do with the results of the games. And I think you make Tyler Bass's job easier by what you do from scrimmage. So I'm more into that. But the bottom line here is he has got to be more consistent. Tyler Bass was 30th in the NFL in field goal percentage last year. 76.5%. You had 10 kickers at 90% or better. And you got this guy that you just paid all this money to, 76.5%. Tyler Bass needs to flirt with 90% field goal made percentage like clockwork for his career. And 2023 was not a good step in the right direction. So this one's really obvious, but like Tyler Bass, need to be more reliable, need to get your confidence going. And if the Bills are going to pay you like you're an upper echelon kicker, perform like an upper echelon kicker. The next one's Von Miller. And this one's obvious, but I have some data that I want to get into with Von Miller. And some data in the next segment that you're not going to want to miss. So don't miss the last segment today. But Von Miller is obviously a big-time poster boy for the bounce back conversation. And boy, oh boy, did Von Miller have one of the quickest falls from grace that I can remember in Buffalo Bills world. All the hype when he was signed, right? Coming off of the Super Bowl win with the Rams, where he was a big part of what they did down the stretch and played really good football in the postseason and the Super Bowl. He comes to Buffalo. All we're talking about is Super Bowl. This is the closer. This is that defensive difference maker that the team has been missing. You remember the Burn It All video? We were all hyped about that. And then he dominates the season opener, right? Everybody's watching it Thursday night in LA. Couple of sacks, like on the first drive, just making Joe Noteboom look silly. I mean, this dude, Von Miller, was everything Brandon Beane signed him to be through 11 games. And then, of course, a torn ACL against Detroit on Thanksgiving. And now it looks like a flop of a signing. Came back in 2023, week 5 against Jacksonville. And what's interesting is Brandon Beane has since come out recently and said they probably brought him back too soon. And I think that's probably a really tough spot to be in because Von, we know that he's got his own hype train going, right? That doesn't help. The guy was talking about week 1. Turns out he wasn't really ready in week 5. And I understand that it's a challenging situation. Like you heard Eric Washington talk about this all the time, the Bills defensive line coach, who did the press availability every week as the defensive coordinator. Said, look, he's working hard. He's doing all the right things. He's doing everything he could possibly do to go out there and perform, saying all the right things. He's got Hall of Fame production for his career. You can understand why the Bills are like, let's get him out there and see. But man, oh man, he was just not effective at all. A complete disaster against the run. Didn't sniff the quarterback all season long. I know he had a couple of moments there in the playoffs late that gives you a little bit of hope for next season. But like collectively just didn't get near the quarterback. And he played 32% of the defensive snaps when he was an active player. So it leads to the question, what can we expect in 2024? And I wish I had an answer for you. I wish I had some convictions about this. I mean, obviously we're excited that he's further removed from the ACL tear, but he's also 35 years old. So I did a little research on sack production for NFL players 35 years or older. And here's what I learned. That since sacks became an official stat in 1982, there have been 24 seasons of 6.5 sacks or more by players 35 years old or older. So since 1982, when sacks became an official stat, you have 24 seasons of more than 6.5 sacks for defensive players that are 35 years or older. 9 of those were double-digit sack seasons. So 9 double-digit sack seasons since 1982 by defensive players 35 years or older. Let me give you the guys that did this since 2000. So since 2000, age 35, more than 6 sacks. Most recently, 2023, Calais Campbell at 37 years old had 6.5 sacks. 2019, Terrell Suggs, 37 years old, 6.5 sacks. 2018, Terrell Suggs, 36 years old, 7 sacks. 2018, Cameron Wake, 36 years old, 6 sacks. 2017, Julius Peppers, 37 years old, 11 sacks. 2016, Julius Peppers, 36 years old, 7.5 sacks. 2011, Jason Taylor, 37 years old, 7 sacks. 2007, Michael Strahan, 36 years old, 9 sacks. 2002, Bruce Smith, 39 years old, 9 sacks. 2000, Bruce Smith, 37 years old, 10 sacks. I think what's discouraging about that list is as I look through it, I don't see a lot of finesse, speed, bend rushers, right? Like Cam Wake, Jason Taylor, all the rest of these guys are power rushers. And I think that the power rushers are going to age more gracefully than the finesse, speed, bend rushers. So yeah, I'm concerned here. Don't know what to expect. Hopefully You get a lot from Greg Rousseau. You get a lot from A.J. Epenesa. Talking about those guys on the other side of it. Has some fascinating data with them. Hopefully you get a lot from Dwayne Smoot because you just don't know what you're getting out of Von Miller. I'd love to talk myself into, he's going to be the next guy on this list. Certainly it'll be better than last year. It has to be, right? The bar set so low. But Von Miller, one of the big X factors for this team, if he can sniff what he was before the ACL tear, man, that'd be so big for this defense. I don't think that's realistic. So how much of a decline from there are we talking? We're going to find out. But when you're talking bounce back Bills, I think there's three guys: Dawson Knox, Tyler Bass, Von Miller. If those guys can come close to what you expect out of them, it's going to make a big difference for the Bills in 2024. All right, now I have some other players on the other side of this that I want to get into. I mentioned Greg Rousseau and A.J. Epenesa. I want to talk about them pre- and post-injury, as well as some other guys, so be sure to stick with me. Folks, you know what just went down? We got the NFL schedule. There are so many high-profile games. I'm sure you're going to want to go to them, whether that's at Highmark Stadium in Buffalo or maybe a road trip. Well, if you want to get tickets for NFL games, you got to check out Game Time. Game Time is the fast and easy way to purchase tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. They have an awesome app that is easy to navigate. They specialize in last-minute tickets, flash deals. They also give you a seat view from the app. Plus, I love this. It's all-in prices. All-in prices. No surprise fees coming at the end of the transaction. You get the all-in price from the outset. Plus, when you purchase a ticket, they send it straight to your phone, so you don't have to dig through emails to find it. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, folks, I mentioned that I had a few more players that I want to get into. Greg Rousseau and A.J. Epenesa are part of that, but there's a couple of other defensive players that, due to injury, we just didn't see the impact that we wanted to from them. Let's start with Greg Rousseau. First 4 games of the season, Greg Rousseau was off to a terrific start. 3 sacks, 2 pass breakups, a forced fumble, and 4 tackles for loss in the first 4 games of the season. You're like, all right, Greg Rousseau is here. 8 sacks in 2022. Great start in 2023. The young man has arrived. And he broke his foot, and he played through it. He missed 1 game, the Jacksonville game, and maybe they don't rush Von Miller back if Greg Rousseau is available for that. And then Rousseau tried to play through this foot deal, and it's tough. I think one way to really measure the impact is if you look at his pass rush productivity, which is a metric that I really like. It takes into account all of your pass rush snaps, and then from there, your pressures, your hurries, your hits, and then it's weighted towards sacks. He had a pass rush productivity score of 9.2. Through the first four games of the season, that was 13th in the NFL among edge rushers with at least 75 pass rush reps. 13th in the NFL among edge rushers with at least 75 pass rush reps through 4 games. Then if you go over his last 14 games, including the playoffs, his pass rush productivity score fell from 13th to 28th. The foot injury mattered. I think in terms of injuries and how they affected a player's performance, A.J. Epenesa is another great example of that. This is pretty big. This is a pretty big deal here. So, of course, A.J. Epenesa makes a couple of big plays against the Chiefs in the regular season win, and he has a rib injury. Before that rib injury, so weeks 1 through 13, A.J. Epenesa's pass rush productivity score was 9.6, 10th in the NFL amongst edge rushers with at least 100 pass rush snaps, weeks 1 through 13. Phenomenal. Playing really good ball. Has their rib injury, misses a little time, comes back. So weeks 14 through the divisional round, his pass rush productivity dips from 9.6 to 4.3. 10th in the NFL to 94th. And the qualifier there, 94th, weeks 14 through the divisional round for edge rushers with at least 40 pass rush snaps. You were getting a lot out of these guys. They got hurt, and then you didn't get as much. I think you can put Leonard Floyd in that bucket. I'm not really going to get into Leonard Floyd because he's not on the team anymore, but it's another player whose injury status affected his caliber of play, and he disappeared late in the season. And then there's two guys that are very obvious to bring up, Matt Milano and Daquan Jones. Matt Milano gone after week 5, tibial plateau fracture. I mean, that's a franchise cornerstone player. That's one of the best linebackers in the game. So, yeah, him back in the lineup, being close to what he's been throughout the years for the Bills is going to be huge. Hopefully he can quickly become that player once again. Very excited to see him and Terrel Bernard play alongside each other for an entire season. And then, of course, Daquan Jones, who missed 10 games with the torn pec. That dude was off to an unbelievable start. Unbelievable start he was off to. Missed 10 games. So the Bills' 2023 season was a journey, right? Started pretty good. Tons of injuries right there in the middle. You're trying to figure out how to play. You kind of figure it out, get a little hot at the end, and then you make the playoffs. You take care of Pittsburgh, and you took Kansas City to the brink. You did. But like back to where we started this conversation, where you have lots of contracts, big contracts, that didn't provide the expected contributions to the team. We talked about these: Dawson Knox, Tyler Bass, Von Miller, Trey White, Matt Milano, Daquan Jones. I mean, Stefon Diggs. What happened to that guy down the stretch? I think specifically for that Kansas City game, Gabe Davis didn't play. Tyrel Dodson's out there on one arm. Rasul Douglas is playing through that ankle injury. Clearly wasn't right against Kansas City. Christian Benford out against Kansas City. Terrel Bernard out against Kansas City. Taylor Rapp out against Kansas City, who was a really important part of your sub packages when you're trying to get more coverage ability on the second level. You already don't have Terrel Bernard. Now you don't have Taylor Rapp. It was a mess. But they still took the Super Bowl champs to the brink. We're going to talk a lot about this 2024 season and the weapons coming together, the offense, Bobby Babich taking over the defense, all the dynamics. I think the biggest thing is some of these players bouncing back, but then not going into your most meaningful game of the season and having a depleted roster. It's a killer. So how do the Bills position themselves to be more healthy when it matters in 2024? Some of that's luck. But the bottom line, and I know that this seems unfair, but your best ability is availability. And the Bills need more injury luck this coming season. They need players to bounce back, but they need those expected contributions out of the players they're paying. You can't pay every player. It's a limited resource environment. You need the players that you hand out these contracts to deliver, especially the highly paid ones. So there you have it. Bills players that need to bounce back. I hope this was a conversation that was enlightening for you. And I hope that you'll come back the rest of the week. Lots of Bills content. We get OTAs on Tuesday. There'll be media coverage there. We're going to hear from Joe Brady, so that'll be fun. Have a conversation with Anthony Prohaska of Cover One coming later this week. We're going to dive into the offensive side of the football. Lots of great content, so don't miss it. Make sure that you're subscribed. Would love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills. And I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.